more negative behaviors that Indiana is exhibiting in class. Has been telling the occasional lie, but when he lies, it's mainly just to avoid trouble. It's not, for fun. It's mainly like when he has a toy and he took it from someone else or something like that, which all kids do. He'll lie about having it. Then it's clear he does have it, but he's kind of trying not to get in trouble. He's just trying to avoid the consequences. He's also showing signs of kind of not really appreciating authority. Like when we're out at recess, of course, kids don't want to stop playing and come in and learn about stuff, but it takes him a little bit longer, and he really does fight me on it. And those two things have kind of brought to my attention, maybe it comes from parenting, because both of those behaviors are signs of two different kinds of parenting styles. So I was wondering if it would be okay if I just made you aware and taught you guys a little bit about the 4 different parenting styles, and maybe we can identify what is what and how it's impacting Indiana. Yeah?
Okay.
Great.
Sure.
So first let's start with how it all came to be. So there's a woman named Diana Baumrind, and in the 1960s, and she kind of paved the way for it, and then these two guys, Mackey and Martin, in the 80s, kind of just extended on it, and let's just get right into it.
Sure.
So there are 4 different types of parenting styles, and the first one we're going to talk about is authoritarian. So authoritarian parents kind of adapt the belief that, kids should be seen and not heard, and they often use the term "because I said so," so they don't really explain the consequences they're putting forth. They kind of just don't negotiate, and they just expect obedience and don't really talk things through, and it's more punishments rather than discipline. All right, so I see we might be dealing with a little bit of that. And yeah, they just don't negotiate, and they don't really consider the child's feelings or talk through anything. And the impacts of this on the child is at more of a higher risk of developing issues with self-esteem because they feel that their opinions aren't valued by the parent who's clearly not valuing their opinion. They can become a little more aggressive. They don't really think things through, how things might be better in the future based off of the choices they make in the present. And they kind of focus more on the anger and resentment they feel toward the parent. And another attribute is they become good liars and manipulators because they're always trying to get out of trouble because they're so often being put in trouble. Mm-hmm. All right, so I can see it sounds a little bit familiar. No blame being placed anywhere. All right, the next parenting style I want to talk to you two about is called permissive parenting. So this is a parent who sometimes does set rules but rarely ever enforces those rules and doesn't really give out consequences very often. You think the child will learn best if you don't really intervene at all.
What?
If you don't really intervene at all, and you kind of just say like, kids will be kids, and there's really not much you can do, and they'll learn on their own. And when you do use consequences, it's very inconsistent, and you're a big negotiator. Like if the child really begs or is super cute or whatever, you'd be like, all right, you can have these privileges back, So it's really mainly inconsistency on the parent's part, and also kind of adopting more of a friendship role than an authority figure or a parent, really, if that makes sense. So yeah, and they also, something that differs from the authoritarian parent is that the permissive parent does encourage the child to talk with them about what's going on and their feelings and all of that, but they don't put much effort into discouraging the bad behavior coming from the child. And the impacts of permissive parenting on the child is that the child might struggle academically, they're not getting as much help, or they're not used to, doing their homework or stuff like that because it's not being reinforced at home. And they can exhibit more behavioral problems because they don't recognize authority figures since they're not getting that from their parents, so they don't have practice with that. So that's another thing that we talked about Indiana exhibiting in school. school. And another thing is lower self-esteem, and mental health is a little bit iffy because they don't have an authority figure at home, which is important, even if the child doesn't realize it, because obviously it could say that, nah, we don't want that, but they do, they need it. And there's not just an effect on the mental health of the child from this type of parenting, but also on the physical health, because someone who's not being taught consequences and all that is obviously, like, we know kids, they're gonna go after the junk food, right? And that can increase obesity or even cavities, and honestly that goes back on the parent and creates more financial issues because they have to pay for the dentist and all of that. So that's permissive parenting. Next, we're going to talk about uninvolved parenting, also known as neglectful parenting. So this, I don't think either of you guys are, but this is someone who doesn't ask the child about schoolwork or anything, just isn't really involved, and rarely know where the child is, who they're with, what they're doing, and you just don't really spend much time with the kid. And there's not that many rules, not much guidance or nurture or attention. And this isn't always meaning an abusive parent, but sometimes it can be someone who has mental health issues or substance abuse issues and so on and so forth. But it could also be someone who's just still dealing with being a person before being a parent, you know? They can have mental health issues, they can have other people to care for, lots of work that they have to focus on, even for the child, to take care of the child, but that kind of gets in the way of being the parent in the first place. So managing a household is a lot of work, we all know that, but this can affect the child in negative ways, like the children, once again, likely to struggle with self-esteem, but for different reasons, and they tend to perform poorly in school and have problems with behavior and are pretty sad because they don't have people around to take care of them and hug them, and that's really important. Mm-hmm. So the last parenting style I want to talk to you about is called authoritative, which is different than authoritarian, so it's important not to get these two confused because they are different. Mm-hmm. So authoritative is kind of like the golden standard that researchers have like claimed for all the parenting styles. So this is a parent that puts a lot of effort into maintaining a positive relationship with their child. It's kind of like combining the really good aspects of the permissive and the authoritarian parent. They do place rules and they are disciplinary, but they explain the reasons behind the consequences and the discipline, and they take the child's feelings into consideration, and they do reinforce those rules, and they invest time and energy into making sure that the bad behavior doesn't start because they're there and involved with the child and they can see what's going on. And a big thing is that there is a difference between punishment and reinforcement, and these are both two different kinds of disciplines. But punishment is like making sure the child feels bad and about what they did and kind of just making them feel really upset, like an authoritarian parent would do, which is one of the ways it affects a child's self-esteem. And in a reinforcement type situation, it would be praising the kid for a good behavior, more positive incentives like that, which is really important and really great and really does help a child progress. And authoritative impacts on the child are, you know, they feel more comfortable expressing their opinions because they're heard at home. They are happier, they're more successful, self-sufficient, independent, self-regulating, and just really great decision makers and all of that later on in life, and that's really important. So Indiana is exhibiting some behavioral issues in terms of lying, having trouble with authority, and some self-esteem issues, like if he gets a math problem wrong, he'll be like, "Ugh, I'm so stupid," which he's not. He's a great kid, very smart. So after going through all this, do you think that maybe we could identify what parenting styles we are?
I think so. Sounds like I might be a more authoritarian.
So you find you're not really as affectionate as you are disciplinarian?
I would say.
And you, Mr. Jones?
Well, look, he's 10 years old and he's really trying hard. he's a good kid, so I like to accept him more for who he is. And all this all these rules and accountability doesn't let him really express who he is. So what was that second one you said? Permissive?
Yes.
I guess if I had to label myself as one, that's the way I view my role as being his parent.
Which is fine. That now something that a lot of people who have conflicting parenting styles might ask is, well, if we're so different as parents, how are we so compatible as a couple? And also, if a child has two different parenting styles going on at home, how is it really affecting them other than behavior-wise? And I just wanted to explain that to you guys. So something that holds to be very true is that opposites attract, which I'm sure you've heard that before. So someone who is more laid back and easygoing is there to help the person who's kind of more frantic and kind of just, job orientated or all of that kind of just brings you back down. And, the person who's kind of more responsible and work orientated is there to kind of motivate the person who's a little bit more lax. And that's what makes you guys such a great couple, I'm sure. But it does have impacts on the kid besides the behavioral issues we have just discussed. It's kind of like the kid doesn't know what side to choose, and it's kind of undermines any rules being made at all because they're two different ones. So it's like, all right, I don't even have any rules. And then it also makes the kid kind of feel like they have to choose sides, and you're not even divorced, So that can become quite anxiety inducing for the child, and it could even cause both of you to resent each other in time because of the effect it has on the child. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I hope you guys take this into account. Hopefully you guys can learn a bit from each other and kind of become more of an authoritative parent rather than authoritarian or permissive, and kind of just take the best of both worlds. And just the main thing about being a parent is being a cohesive unit to your child. You want to be on the same page, and you want the child to see that. So communicate with your child and communicate with each other, and everything should be great because you have a great kid. Communication is key, and you have a great, great kid, and you both are great parents, and I'm always here to help.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate your listening.
Thank you, Miss Singer.